As a king tide.
The tides are caused by significant gravitational forces.
Hail strikes western New York, but there was something different with this storm.
It makes it almost easier for hail to develop, a different kind of hail.
They may look like ladybugs trying to get into your home, but they're not.
These are Asian lady beetles, and they look reddish orange to red. They can vary in color a little bit.
And a quick lesson on how wind forms.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. The Pacific storm we have been talking about this week is now battering portions of the West Coast. The strongest impact is the high winds, where gusts could get up to 60 miles per hour, whipping the coast. The system is also whipping up the sea, where the winds could capsize or even damage boats. Thousands of homes in Northern California have no power this morning. Utility crews in that area are on standby as well. As Emma Underwood explains, they have been preparing for widespread outages.
This is the most significant storm we've had this season, so we are tracking it very closely.
PG&E says this storm could bring the strongest wind gusts and rainfall seen so far this season. As this storm season ramps up, PG&E says they've been making improvements to prevent outages the best they can before they happen.
We've been hardening our system and installing some power lines underground, which helps protect them from all sorts of weather. We've also been installing stronger poles.
PG&E says crews will remain on alert even after this storm passes, with another round of heavy rain expected later in the week. Marino says they're using lessons from recent storms to identify trouble spots faster, aiming to cut down response times and keep more customers connected throughout the season.
Well, the storm is also one of the factors bringing massive waves to the coast, also known as king tides. Some could be as high as 20 feet, but it's not just the weather. The alignment of the sun, earth, and especially the moon play significant roles. Emily Gracie spoke with the marine scientist to give us a better understanding of king tides.
But its origin is supposedly from Australia, where it's basically the king tides were causing some higher than normal surf conditions in certain areas, and so some relatively famous surf areas were suddenly safer to surf over, where there's normally like lower tides would cause you to collide into the reef. And so as a result, in certain areas during the highest astronomical tides, those areas were safer to surf in and had some pretty gnarly conditions. So as a result, they called them the king tides.
Can you explain scientifically how the sun and the moon are influencing our tides?
So the tides are ultimately influences, caused by, significant gravitational forces. And so the sun, of course, we orbit around the sun. And so certain times of the year cause the tide to be stronger or weaker. And then, of course, in the moon, when it's orbiting around our planet every 28 days, it comes into perigee and apogee. And so in each of those situations, when the moon is closer to Earth and during the periods when Earth is closer to the sun, we can have some of the stronger tides during the year. So this usually kind of lands in the spring and the fall. A lot of the work that we've done tracking king tides over the last several years and having community scientists go out and help us map these events when they're happening, we're noticing them happening and during the highest astronomical tide of September, October, or November.
Does water temperature or salinity or time of year matter as far as what's going on with the actual ocean?
It does to an extent. All these are important factors. For example, water, of course, occupies more space when it's warmer. And so steric expansion is critically important. So the influence of the temperature of the ocean is important. Salinity, of course, as well, can play a factor since it does change the density of the ocean and its ability to move. But beyond that, they're relatively minor forces in the grand scheme of things.
We mentioned how the full moon plays a role in those king tides. This morning, the November full moon, also a supermoon, peaked. Don't worry if you missed it, you'll still be able to see it tonight. This month's full moon is also known as a beaver moon. Meteorologist Noah Hawk explains why.
Back in the Native American days, right around this time of year, as they start to prep for winter, this is the perfect time to harvest some of that beaver fur to help stay warm for the upcoming winter. But the November full moon is also going to be special because it'll also be a supermoon. But what exactly does that mean? Well, first we need to talk about the orbit of the moon. Some people think that it might be in a circular path, but that's not true. It's going to be in a path known as an elliptical path. This is like if you took that circle, you stretched out those two sides, and it almost turned into an oval oval shape. But you'll notice the Earth is also not going to be centered within this elliptical path either. And so because of this, there's going to be one point when the moon is closest to the Earth, and that's going to be the perigee. And then in the night sky, that moon is going to appear bigger and also brighter. That's what that November full moon is going to do. But what about if it does the opposite? What if it's furthest away from Earth, all the way on that other side? Well, this is going to be the position called apogee, and that moon is going to appear smaller and also dimmer.
A big cleanup continues after extreme winds howled through parts of southern New England earlier this week. Kennedy Buck reports.
We've just been trying to clean up the yard a little bit.
The impact of an unexpected and unusual windstorm.
I was getting ready for bed and I heard a rumble that sounded kind of like thunder, but it was a little bit different. And so I went upstairs because my children were sleeping upstairs. And then all of a sudden the house started to shake, like violently.
The violent rumble ended up being a powerful thunderstorm that landed on the ground in strong straight line winds. The Rittenhouse's yard experienced some of the worst impact.
Everything was kind of ripped apart, and somehow our house was spared, thankfully. So there was no damage to the house, but it did tear down our electric service.
Triad Boat Works also experiencing some wind damage. You can take a look right here behind me of some of that aftermath.
I have never seen weather like that, and it happened probably in the course of like 2 minutes. It was really intense, and I have never heard a noise that loud in my life.
Many are still grateful that the impact wasn't too severe.
Thankfully, the town is showing up for us.
Look at that. In western New York, hail was the story earlier this week. A storm brought lots of hail, not to mention lightning to the Rochester region, but this was not a typical hail storm. As meteorologist Scott Hetzko explains, the height of the cold air in the clouds was a bit unusual.
This time of year, when the temperature in the clouds are really dropping quickly, the freezing levels going down, it makes it almost easier for hail to develop, a different kind of hail, so to speak, versus like big thunderstorms in the summer, because that air has really got to go up, got to go really, really high where the freezing level is. But tonight, the freezing level was dropping, so a rather shallow freezing level meant the raindrops could easily make their way up in these thunderstorms that were rather pedestrian otherwise, forming the ice, making the lightning kind of intense as well, and producing that pea-sized hail. It was a pretty intense 2 hours between 6:30 and 8:30.
The cotton harvest is underway in the Texas Panhandle, and farmers say that recent weather has helped this year's crop, but they do have other concerns. Drew Powell has more.
We sprayed cotton a couple of weeks ago, bow buster, to open these bowls up, drop some leaves off. We've had a little freeze. That's helped a lot. Letting it dry down, get ready to go.
You know, irrigated cotton is certainly a lot easier to raise a crop whenever there's stressful times throughout the year. Rain along the way certainly helps with our irrigated crops.
When you compare and contrast irrigated cotton to dryland cotton, the yields are different. And many ag producers up here in the Texas Panhandle are actually growing less irrigated cotton.
A lot of them, if they can raise dryland crops, that cuts down on the input cost, and they're able to maybe survive this situation that we're in.
Weather permitting, it takes anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks to get the irrigated cotton out of the field.
And we wanted to share this time lapse with you. It shows a beautiful sunset over Niagara Falls. Now you can't see the falls, but what appears to be smoke or steam rising in the middle of your screen is actually mist rising from the falls. More than 3,000 tons of water flows over the falls every second. 4 of the 5 Great Lakes drain into the Niagara River before going over the falls and emptying into Lake Ontario. And the falls can generate up to 4 million kilowatts of electricity, enough to supply more than a quarter of all the power used in New York State and Ontario, Canada. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll show you how one South Carolina community is turning to green spaces to help reduce flooding risks. And it's peak season for car crashes involving deer. We'll share tips for staying safe on the road.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. We're still tracking an active pattern in the Northeast this week. Here we are 7 o'clock this morning. Some clouds are starting to increase. Today's kind of a chilly day. Most areas will top out in the 50s. This is 4:30 in the afternoon. We're introducing rain primarily in northern New England and through New York. Some of the higher elevations in the mountains will get some accumulating snow. The back edge of the rain and mountain snow moves out early on Thursday. Look for developing sun. It's going to be cool and windy with highs in the 40s.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Dry through your Wednesday, but here comes a strong cold front. This one will move through very quickly. And with it, we will be talking about not much rainfall. In fact, almost none, but there will be a lot of wind. And we will be talking about temperatures taking a big dive down. We'll still hit the mid-60s, upper 60s, even close to 70 degrees for Wednesday afternoon. But cooler air will arrive behind that front on Thursday, 40s to 50s for highs.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Collins with a look at your southeast forecast. High pressure will continue to dominate our weather as we head through the middle of the week. However, additional cloud cover will build in across South Florida with a chance for a few coastal showers along the east coast into the afternoon, both Wednesday and Thursday. A look at afternoon highs on Wednesday, returning to the 70s for most of the Carolinas and across parts of the Mississippi River Valley, along the northern Gulf Coast in the low 80s and in the mid 80s across South Florida.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Looks like a rainbow minus the vibrant color. It's a fog bow, a relative of the rainbow. Both appear opposite the sun, but fog bows form in fog and are mostly white. Water droplets in fog are much smaller than the drops that help form rainbows. Diffraction overtakes the light, which causes the colors to blur together and overlap, making fog bows appear white.
Rapid development and conservation can be at odds sometimes, but in one of South Carolina's fastest growing communities, they're looking to balance expansion with the preservation of green spaces and reducing flood risk at the same time. Meteorologist Sonia Stevens reports.
Dorchester County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state, yet green space is still a priority. The Greenbelt program has been in the works for at least 10 years. Within the past few years, it's come to fruition, widely supported by the citizens.
They overwhelmingly supported the $35 million that we put in that pot for greenbelts. And that was pretty important because it's not parks necessarily, but it can be.
Areas like Young's Farm, Berry Track, Beach Hill Track, Ashley River Park. The goal is to protect green space.
Those areas that we can put lifelong perpetual conservation easements on or perpetually in conservation so that they are available to the public or at least conserved from future development.
But that's not the only thing that is being done. The county recently passed the compensatory storage ordinance.
If you're bringing in fill to raise the elevation for a residence or a building of some sort, you have to take out an equal amount, so it's a one-to-one compensation.
This applies for builders and developers.
This is not stormwater. They're still required to do all of the stormwater requirements, but this is simply in floodplains. So it's kind of a two-layered approach at looking at managing some of the flooding.
The next step is for a regional watershed study to be completed.
So Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester looks at the watershed and where this water is coming from and what it takes to get this water back out to the rivers and to the ocean so that we're not causing flooding. So that what we do in Dorchester County doesn't cause downstream flooding in Charleston County, and what Berkeley County, when those waters come across into Dorchester County, they're not causing flooding here.
The hope is to better manage water flow. It's clear that resiliency isn't just one solution.
It is not just what happens after a storm. It's how we're preparing prior to a storm, prior to some natural catastrophe like flooding, compensatory storage, changing our flood maps, changing the requirements in detention ponds. All of that is pretty critical in what we're doing.
Have you noticed what looks like large swarms of ladybugs trying to get into your home? It's a common sight this time of year in many parts of the country, but these are not ladybugs. They are what's called Asian lady beetles. Meteorologist Sharon Ray tells us more about them.
These are Asian lady beetles, and they look reddish orange to red. They can vary in color a little bit, but they look like ladybugs, but these are actually from Asia, and they were brought to the United States in the 1970s for agricultural purposes because they do feed on pests, and they eat those aphids. So they're good in that regard for our gardens and for agriculture. But boy, they can really be annoying. Why are they here? Well, they are here because they were brought over in the 70s, but in the fall, they like to find a place to shelter. So the adult beetles start looking for shelter in October and November. That's when you're gonna see them the most. And back in Asia, they used to like hanging out in the tall vertical cliffs. That's where they would protect themselves. Well, unfortunately, our homes kind of look like that. The most vertical homes they can find, they will look for shelter in those and come in the cracks, come in anywhere they can to get into that warmer home. So they like to congregate in vertical structures to overwinter. And then as we get into the spring, they tend to leave. They want to leave and find food. Now, when they're in your home, you may wonder if they're harmful. Generally not, but they can lightly bite you. Yeah, they can bite a little bit, and they can also, if you squish them, they can release a nasty odor, and also they can stain materials. So it's best not to squish them. Maybe to vacuum them up or sweep them up is the best idea with these things. But again, they will be here in your homes into the winter months, but then they like to leave in March and April looking for food. And I have noticed a couple here in our studio. I just saw one crawling around right by my feet here.
Oh, really? They may be graceful in the woods, but deer are dangerous on the roads. As we head into peak season for deer-related vehicle collisions, safety officials are urging drivers to use extra caution on the road. Hannah Poggi has more.
Mid-November marks the peak of deer's breeding season, a time where young deer are also searching for new territory. Communications Director Travis Lau from the Pennsylvania Game Commission says this leads to increased deer activity.
Bucks will be out there. They'll be covering more of their home ranges. They'll be moving more during the daytime. They're seeking out receptive does. If they encounter does that aren't yet ready to breed, they sometimes chase them.
Lau shares what drivers can do to help prevent a crash involving deer.
You'll want to pay particular attention in those areas that are marked with deer crossing signs. They're placed there because those are well-known corridors for deer traffic. Deer cross the roads there frequently. Keep in mind, too, that deer often travel in groups and often do so single file.
As daylight saving time ends, Lau notes a key way drivers can spot deer on the road.
Peak times for deer movement around dusk and dawn and more traffic driving in the dark. A deer's eye will glow a reflective green when hit with a headlight.
Another danger on the road is wind. Its effect can be seen and felt, but how does it form? Emma Keegan explains.
With a couple of these windier days across the Ohio Valley, I often get asked the question, what exactly causes this wind? Well, it's all due to that air pressure. It's trying to find its equilibrium or balance, in other words. Think of it like you're opening a soda can in your home to enjoy. There's a higher pressure inside the can compared to the lower pressure inside the room. So when you open the can, you hear that classic noise. The wind from inside the can rushes out into the outside to try to equalize the pressure between the two. And once the wind stops, you know that the pressure between the inside and the outside of the can is the same, and you can finally enjoy a nice cold beverage. When you shake up that soda can, though, you're building the pressure inside of the can to even stronger, so there's an even further gradient. And when you open that can, you have an even stronger wind come out of it and maybe a couple of fizzy bubbles as well, which indicates a stronger wind speed. So the stronger the gradient, the stronger the winds you might experience. This applies on global scales as well, with high and low pressure systems systems all across the continental U.S. When you have a weaker higher pressure and weaker lower pressure nearby, you'll see almost these light, weaker winds in between the two. However, with these stronger systems like the Alberta Clippers we've been seeing across the Ohio Valley, you get these stronger wind speeds overall.
And time now for a short break, but first we take to the skies over the Truckee River near Fresno, California.
Good Wednesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael. Pretty quiet weather for most of the Midwest today. There is a cold front sliding through the Great Lakes, giving a few stray light rain showers. But look at all the sunshine we've got across the plains. A nice cool day for us as we continue on into the day tomorrow. A few more building clouds out across the west, and then eventually some rain showers moving their way into the Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes for Friday, with cooler temperatures on the way.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. We're waking up a little bit on the chilly side for our friends in Amarillo at about 48. Same thing for Little Rock at 48. 50s up in Oklahoma City. Warm, humid, 62 down into Brownsville. A weak front going to be moving through Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle. Won't fire up much in the way of rain. Just bring a little bit of drier air and a change of winds. Otherwise, going to be a pretty nice day. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Well, hi there, everybody, and a happy Wednesday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. November, the time of year the storms keep on chugging through the PNW. We had wind overnight around the East Puget Sound lowlands outside of Seattle. Today will be showery off and on all the way down to Northern California and through Portland, too. Meanwhile, that 81 in Las Vegas this time of year sounds better and better. Look at this big disturbance, though, eventually bringing rain to San Francisco and Sacramento today as well. And that's the scene from here.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Vitas Reed at CBS 12 in West Palm Beach, Florida, and you are watching the National Weather Desk.
Well, we all know it's warmer in the daytime and it cools down at night, but the cooling isn't just because the sun is going down. Meteorologist Miriam Caldwell explains.
You've probably noticed that some nights feel a lot colder than others, even when the daytime temperatures are about the same. That's due to what we call radiational cooling. And here's how it works. During the day, the sun warms up the ground, and at night, that heat escapes back into the atmosphere. When it's cloudy, the clouds act like a blanket, trapping some of that heat from the day near the surface, keeping the night a little bit milder. But on those clear nights, there's nothing to trap that warmth from earlier, so it radiates straight into space, and the temperature drops really quickly. So the next time you step outside on a clear night, you can thank the lack of clouds for that extra chill you may feel in the air.
And looking for more weather content just like this, be sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on all your favorite platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Just search the National Weather Desk or scan the QR code on the bottom left corner of your screen. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great day, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.